Welcome, and thank you for joining this UDL web module series hosted by the Supporting Innovative Practices Project, or SIP, and funded by the California Department of Education Special Education Division. This module was developed in partnership with the Engaging Every Learner Foundation, whose leadership and expertise help bring this learning to life. At SIP, we believe every student deserves to learn in environments where they're valued, supported, and fully included. We're committed to challenging exclusionary practices through systemic change and advocacy, ensuring that all students, especially those with disabilities, have equitable access, meaningful opportunities, and a true sense of belonging. Through this module, we hope your learning about universal design for learning will support you in disrupting ableism, planning for learner variability, and creating classrooms that promote access, agency, and success for each and every learner.
Welcome to this asynchronous module focused on integrating representation and diversity in classroom learning experiences. Hi, my name is Nicole Tucker-Smith, and I'm excited to be a part of this learning journey with you. Thank you for taking time to deepen understanding about how representation and diversity influence student engagement and a sense of belonging. In this module, we'll focus on why representation matters, what it means to consider representation and diversity in classroom learning, and how to incorporate these considerations into learning experiences. First, let's make sure that we have a shared understanding of the term representation. In this context, we're referring to representation as the portrayal of an identity, culture, or experience. Think about what school was like for you as a student. What identities or cultures were represented in your books, videos, or other instructional media? How were those cultures portrayed? How were those identities portrayed? Did those representations impact you in any way? Consciously or unconsciously? The answer is yes. Here are 3 reasons, grounded in neuroscience, why representation matters. Reason number 1, representation increases a learner's connection to the content being learned. Connection is a conduit for learning. For learners, connection enhances relevance and the value of what we're learning. When learners are able to perceive themselves, their identities, cultures, or experiences in classroom learning, the curriculum is serving as a mirror. Their lived experiences are being reflected back to them. Authentic representation feels affirming and increases one's understanding of self. This connection leverages the joy factor in learning and increases student engagement. Think about a time when you, as a learner, felt a strong sense of connection during a learning experience. What was present? What was the impact? Take a moment to pause and reflect individually or discuss with colleagues. Curriculum and classroom learning can also serve as windows into the perspectives and experiences of others. Which brings us to reason number 2. Representation builds empathy. Humans naturally feel a sense of empathy for people and cultures to whom they feel similar. But humans tend to lack empathy for people and cultures for whom they perceive to be different. Windows make what would otherwise be perceived as a difference to feel more familiar by illuminating the experiences of others and challenging stereotypes and preconceptions. Windows bridge the empathy gap and increase our sense of connection to others. All students need mirrors and windows. As learners, Mirrors signal that we matter, and windows remind us that other people, cultures, histories, worldviews, perspectives, and experiences matter too. Our third reason to attend to representation and diversity is to cultivate a sense of belonging and rightful presence. Rightful presence is about co-creating schools and learning experiences that are meaningful and relevant for every student to experience belonging. Belonging is the sense that I want to be here and they want me to. When we incorporate diverse representation into classroom learning experiences, we value learner variability, the myriad ways learners vary. We increase perspective taking and reduce feelings of exclusion. Belonging signals safety, a key ingredient for learning. Learning new skills and information requires risk taking, trying something you can't already do and understanding something you don't already know. A sense of belonging helps learners feel safe enough to take that risk. Diverse representation helps educators achieve these belonging side effects for learners. Increased sense of being valued, increased trust, being more receptive to feedback, reduced anxiety, and increased effort, curiosity, and creativity. When it comes to classroom experiences, belonging is not a nice to have icing on the cake, but a neurobiological catalyst for learning. So, how do educators integrate representation and diversity into classroom learning experiences? The Universal Design for Learning, UDL, Guidelines 3.0 version offers several considerations. For this module, let's focus on the UDL principle, multiple means of representation. Within the context of UDL, representation refers to the ways in which content is presented so that learners are able to make sense of that information. Options for representation support learners' opportunities for making meaning. Under the principle multiple means of representation, the first guideline is perception, and one of the considerations is to represent a diversity of perspectives and identities in authentic ways. The UDL Guidelines website by CAST, the founders of UDL, explains that in addition to sensory perception, it is important for learners to perceive themselves and the perspectives of others in the curriculum, instructional materials, and media used in the learning environment. And without exposure to other perspectives, learners may gain the false understanding that their lived experiences are universal for everyone, or that other perspectives are less valid or valued. Understanding the impact of this consideration often begins with reflecting on one's own identity. To support your reflection and professional learning, try creating a significance circle. First, record the identities, activities, people, cultural factors, hobbies, and institutions that are important to you. Then, place those items that are most important to you closest to the center of the circle. Place the less important items toward the perimeter. Next, consider these reflection questions. What do you consider to be the most important or significant to you? When have you felt like what was significant to you was also valued by others or valued by your environment? How does it feel when factors that are significant to you are ignored or devalued? How do you learn about and honor what may be important to someone else? If you are using these reflection questions to engage in a discussion with others, please remember the tenet: always invitation, never invasion. You do not need to share anything that you feel uncomfortable sharing, nor should you pressure someone else to do so. As a listener, take care to not negate the experiences of others by saying things like, oh, well, that hasn't been my experience. Simply listen to learn and create space for the perspective of someone else. Take time now to pause and reflect individually or discuss with others. As we explore representation and diversity, let's consider how disability is represented in our learning experiences. To have this conversation authentically, it is important to center voices from disability communities. Take time to read Finding Dory, Disability, Culture, and Collective Access, an article by Alice Wong, an Asian American disabled woman who publishes content on her blog, Disability Visibility Project. After reading this blog post, consider the following. In your learning experiences as a student, to what extent were people with disabilities included? How were they portrayed? How are people with disabilities included and portrayed in your current curricula and classroom learning experiences? How might this impact a sense of belonging among learners? How might we represent a diversity of perspectives, identities, and experiences in classroom learning environments? Now pause and reflect individually or discuss with others. Welcome back from your reflection. To support your application of diverse representation, this module also contains exploratory resources, including tools, books, websites, and extension activities to help educators incorporate these considerations in their schools and classrooms. Next, the UDL principle, Multiple Means of Representation, also includes the guideline, Design Options for Building Knowledge. And one of the considerations is to cultivate multiple ways of knowing and making meaning. Multiple ways of knowing refers to the myriad approaches learners use to construct knowledge and make sense of the world. For example, here are 16 different ways that learners might build knowledge. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's a sampling of ways. As we mention each way of knowing, think about yourself as a learner and rank your preference using the Multiple Ways of Knowing reflection sheet. In ranking, your score for each will range from 1 indicating a low preference to 4 indicating a high preference. Authority, knowledge from an expert or reliable source. Intuition, knowledge through instinct or gut feeling. Experience, knowledge from observation, experimentation, and experience through senses. Reasoning, knowledge through logical thinking or mathematical modeling. Scientific method, systematic observation, measurement, and experimentation through testing a hypothesis. Memorization, committing something to memory, learning by heart. Storytelling, lessons through narratives that invoke insight. Algorithms, a process or set of rules to be followed in calculations. Problem solving, exploring and finding solutions to complex problems or issues. Individual functions approach, understanding discrete parts that build up into a whole. Systems approach, understanding a whole system and then its parts. Relational, learning through interpersonal experiences. Kinesthetic, learning through physical activity and movement. Linear thinking, following a known step-by-step progression. Holistic thinking, focusing on the context and the relationship among elements within the context. Analogies, comparing one thing to another to gain clarity. Now, either reflect or discuss with others how you ranked each way of knowing. Here are a few reflection or discussion questions to consider. Which ways of knowing did you rank the highest? Which ways of knowing did you rank the lowest? Did you notice any patterns? What felt surprising to you? Did you find yourself wanting to know more about the context in order to accurately score your preference? Take a moment to pause and reflect or discuss. As you were ranking your preference for each way of knowing, some of you may have felt like, well, it depends, because context matters. Even how you are feeling on a given day or who you are learning with might influence your preferences. Some ways of knowing are not inherently more valid or less worthy than other ways of knowing. Our preferred approaches for building knowledge will depend on the situation. Diverse representation requires creating space for multiple ways of knowing. Now, let's consider these same ways of knowing divided into two lists. On the left side, we have authority, memorization, experience, reasoning, scientific method, algorithms, individual functions approach, and linear thinking. On the right side, we have intuition, storytelling, relational, kinesthetic, analogies, problem solving, systems approach, and holistic thinking. Which methods are prioritized in schools? The list on the left or the right? When classroom learning excludes some ways of knowing like storytelling, analogies, and holistic thinking, some learners may draw the conclusion that school is not for them or they are not a math person. Integrating representation and diversity includes incorporating multiple ways of knowing into classroom learning experiences. This module offers an extension activity, the Multiple Ways of Knowing Inventory, which you are invited to complete as an individual or group. This sample inventory is designed to help educators analyze a current unit and identify opportunity areas to increase authentic representation. This extension activity is one way to keep the learning moving forward in your context. Educators cannot assume to know all the ways learners identify or build knowledge. Teachers do, however, have the responsibility to create space in the classroom for students to be able to bring their authentic selves and explore multiple ways of knowing. As students are developing their interests, cares, concerns, hopes, and dreams, educators create classrooms that cultivate belonging for learners to perceive themselves and the experiences of others. Authentically incorporating representation and diversity into classroom learning experiences is an ongoing journey. Deep professional learning and reflection are required, and instruction must be designed with care. I invite you to let this module be more like a seed instead of a destination point. Feel free to engage in the extension activities and additional resources, including tools to support implementation. Invite colleagues to engage with you. There is so much to learn and many ways to grow together.
Thank you for participating in this UDL web module series. We extend our sincere appreciation to the El Dorado County Office of Education, Riverside County Office of Education, and the California Department of Education Special Education Division for their partnership and support in making this work possible. We also offer our heartfelt thanks to Engaging Every Learner Foundation for their partnership in the development of this module and for their commitment to inclusive and learner centered design. Most importantly, thank you for your dedication to building inclusive learning environments where every student can thrive.